Hello. In the Middle East, there was a city called el-Hammam. 3,600 years ago, this was a bustling city with over 8,000 people, located near the Dead Sea in Jordan. One night it was there, the next day it was gone, completely obliterated. The city was totally destroyed in a flash of light, fire, a huge blast, a huge explosion that was seen far and wide in that region. It turns out that an unseen icy space rock moving at 38,000 miles per hour, which is 61,000 kilometers per hour, exploded in a massive fireball about 2.5 miles or 4 kilometers above the ground with the explosive energy of 1,000 Hiroshima bombs. The air temperature over the city quickly rose to over 2,000 degrees Celsius, which is 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit. Clothing, wood, bodies, everything in the city burst into flames. Swords were melted, spears, mud bricks, pottery was all melted, and the entire city was on fire. Then, a few seconds later, a massive shockwave hit the city from the explosion. The shockwave was moving at 740 miles per hour, or 1,200 kilometers per hour, far quicker and more destructive than the worst tornado ever. The deadly winds demolished every building in the city, and in fact they sheared off the top 40 feet or 12 meters of a 4-story palace in the center of the city. They blew the debris from the city into the next valley. None of the 8,000 people or any of the animals in the city survived. Bodies were torn up, incinerated, bones were pulverized into small pieces. 1 minute later, about 14 miles away or 22 kilometers away to the west of this city, the winds hit the biblical city of Jericho, and the walls tumbled down and the city burned to the ground. How do we know all this? Well, scientists, a paper just came out, a peer-reviewed publication just came out, and it detailed in great detail, and I'll show you these papers when I'm sitting in front of my computer in a subsequent video, but 15 years of research has been done to get this information, involving hundreds of people of different professions: archaeologists, geologists, geochemists, geomorphologists, mineralogists, paleobotanists, sedimentation people, cosmic impact experts, and the medical community. So it's been a huge collaborative effort to do the detective work on the site to determine what happened. So the city was excavated, and a dark 5-foot or 1.5 meter thick layer of charcoal, ash, melted mud bricks, and melted pottery was found in the excavation. This was called the destruction layer by the archaeologists. And the cause was not a volcano or an earthquake or warfare. Those things, none of those things would have melted the mud bricks, the pottery. None of it would have done that. So there's something online, and you can look at it, and I'll show you an example in the next video, but it's the online impact calculator, and you can put in different parameters for a asteroid or comet, and the composition, the speed, the angle, etc., and figure out how much energy would be released from a particular bolide or object from space, rock, comet, asteroid, etc. So the culprit was determined to be most likely a small asteroid, similar to the Tunguska, Russia 1908 impact that knocked down 80 million trees. And of course, it was a much smaller version of the dinosaur killer 65 million years ago. The proof was coming from many different, there's many different avenues of proof showing that this city was destroyed by an asteroid impact. For example, diamonds in the dirt. There were finely fractured sand grains called shocked quartz, and those only form at pressures of 725,000 psi, or 5.6, or 5 gigapascals, sorry. 5 gigapascals, how much pressure is that? Well, if you were using your thumb to support 6 68-ton Abrams military tanks stacked in a pile on your thumb, that would be the pressure. So those pressures are not obtained from volcanoes or earthquakes or anything else. It's only an asteroid strike that could do that. These diamonds are tiny little diamonds. They're each smaller than the flu virus. They basically, carbon in the wood and plants was compressed so much by this 5 gigapascal pressure that they became very, very tall diamonds, or also known as diamondoids to mineralogists. Also, the pottery and mud bricks was melted. It was bubbled. And to do that in lab experiments, it requires temperatures of 1500 degrees Celsius or 2700 degrees Fahrenheit. There were also little spherules, little spheroids, little tiny balls of vaporized iron and sand, and those have a melting point of 1590 degrees Celsius or 2000 degrees Fahrenheit. There were also iridium metallic grains. Iridium is a common element in asteroids. Those have a melting point of 2466 Celsius or 4455 Fahrenheit. There was also platinum and zirconium silicate spheroids with melting points of over 1500 degrees Celsius, about 3000 Fahrenheit. The same sort of affected materials, the diamondoids, the fractured quartz, are found in Tunguska from that meteor strike, in the Chicxulub crater, which is a dino killer strike, and also with hydrogen bomb detonation. So different hydrogen bomb tests, would fuse the sand into these sort of structures. The city, plus 100 other areas that were settled nearby, were abandoned after the strike for several centuries. In fact, up to 600 years after. So why would this good farming land be abandoned? It's because salt was deposited far and wide in the soils of the region, and the salt concentrations were too high to allow any agriculture to occur. So the explosion likely vaporized salt across the valley, parts of the Dead Sea, and it spread the salt far and wide, and it took 600 years for the rains to wash the salt down through the soils and out of the fields to allow agriculture to resume. So the area was basically abandoned for 600 years after the asteroid impact. Now, of course, oral descriptions of the explosion have been handed down for generations because many people far and wide in that area and the surrounding region would have seen the massive explosion and determined that nobody survived in the city. And it's believed that some stories in the Bible, for example, the Sodom story, city of Sodom and Gomorrah destroyed. The Bible describes stones and fire falling from the sky. cities being destroyed, massive numbers of people being killed, walls being knocked over, etc. Those stories in the Bible can be, are likely actually descriptions carried down over many, many centuries by word of mouth and, became incorporated in the Bible. Now, this is a very fascinating story, and I will go over the paper that has just been published describing the destruction of this city 3,600 years ago by an asteroid. Now, there is a climate connection from a different asteroid impact, which was 12,800 years ago in Syria. We know there was an asteroid impact there because of the melting, because materials there that go at that time were melted, diamondoids were created, fractured quartz was created, and those things can only be created by the pressures from an asteroid impact. But what's interesting is there's many, many locations in the northern hemisphere at that time period, 12,800 years ago, and actually some locations even in the southern hemisphere where impacts occurred roughly the same time. So it's actually believed, I think, and I'll talk about the paper that describes that impact 12,800 years ago. It's believed that that was probably a comet that broke up into many, many different pieces. So they were all sort of tracking in the sky, and they were entering the Earth's atmosphere at different points. And the pieces were large enough, many of the pieces were large enough to have airbursts over the land or even impact and create craters on the land surface at multiple points, mostly in the northern hemisphere, but some in the southern hemisphere as well. And I'll show a map showing where those impact strikes occurred. But the significant connection to climate is that about 12,800 years ago, that was the beginning of the Younger Dryas dip. So if you look at temperatures, we're coming out of the previous ice age, which peaked at 21,000 years ago. Things are warming up, and we have this period of warming called the Bowling Asteroid period, and then suddenly the temperatures plunged, and we go into the Younger Dryas period. The temperatures plunged many degrees globally, and we went into the Younger Dryas. And it's been speculated that for a long time, actually, that period, the Younger Dryas cooling, as we were coming out of the Ice Age, was caused by such an event, like comet breaking up, lots of impacts around the planet, lots of dust kicked up into the atmosphere, causing a cooling of the planet, a significant cooling of the planet. Okay, so I'm going to talk about both of those papers in my subsequent video on this topic, because it's just, it's actually quite fascinating. I think the city that was destroyed 3,600 years ago, I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name right, Tal el-Hammam, that city, talk about bad luck, right? I mean, population densities were much, much lower, of course, back then. Here you have a thriving city in the middle of a desert, okay? And there weren't a lot of urban centers around. There was people sort of farming, there was rural areas, and, they had this city, which was a big city for that time period. And it happened to be in the wrong place. This asteroid came along, broke up in the atmosphere, and the shockwave and the heat and everything came. It was at such an angle, and it basically right over the city, and it completely demolished and destroyed the city. And of course, it came from the skies, it came from the heavens, and people thought that it was God's wrath in destroying the city, for various reasons. So anyway, I find this topic I find this topic extremely fascinating, and I'm going to show you the details from those two papers. I'll film later on today, and I'll release all of this stuff at once, hopefully, or maybe stagger it a little bit. But thank you for listening, and just a couple personal things. I'm going to Glasgow in about a month. I'm going to COP26. I'm going to be working with people from the group Facing Future, who have a press room booked for each day of the 2-week conference to give presentations on all kinds of different topics. And so I'll be a guest speaker on some of those programs. But I'm also doing I have my own session with the Climate Emergency Forum. Okay, so each Friday we've been doing videos, with Regina and Peter Carter and myself, and Charles and Heidi have been doing an incredible job editing and producing these videos. So you can look at the Climate Emergency Forum. If you Google Climate Emergency Forum on YouTube, you can find all of these videos. And we basically started doing these videos as sort of a early preparation for the COP conference, because we didn't know if it would be in person or online. And it is in person, so I'm going, and I'll be doing a GoFundMe to do a bit of fundraising to cover some of the airfare and Airbnb and stuff, so that I'm not too much out of pocket for the conference. So that'll be set up soon, and so I'll be doing the press conferences every day. 28-minute sessions for pretty much I think for 12 or 13 days of the 14-day conference, and that stuff is all recorded by the UN IPCC and posted up on their website, but I'll also be filming it myself and posting videos on that. And I will bring a CO2 detector, which I've been doing some work with to monitor indoor air quality. And on another note, I've been reading a couple fascinating books, which I wanted to just share with you. So this book is called Rationality: What Is It, Why It Seems Scarce, Why It Matters. It's by Steven Pinker, a psychologist at Harvard, I believe. He's written a number of books. I haven't read any of his books. This is the first one, and it's really fascinating. How, are we rational or irrational? If we were completely rational, we wouldn't have let climate get so out of control. And I'm also reading this book here, which is the Harvard Business Review. They put out all of these little books. So this one's on mental toughness. And, that's something that anybody dealing and studying with climate change, can find handy, right? For keeping that mental toughness, keeping that focus to, for me, in my case, to continue to put out these videos at a fast clip and try to educate you on the science of abrupt climate change, and to connect the dots to make projections and inferences of what's coming down the pipes. So anyway, thanks again for listening. I really appreciate people that have supported my work. So my only source of income for this work is the PayPal on my website, paulbeckwith.net. So please continue to support my efforts, and if you haven't, then you can set up a one-time donation, or weekly donations, or monthly, or whatever, to support, so I can keep doing these videos. I don't travel very often. Some people have said, well, going to the COP, I weighed the sort of pros and cons of it, and I really minimize air travel. right? Because of the carbon emissions from it. But one of the biggest misconceptions that's been put out there by if you think about who came up with the idea of carbon footprint for individuals, and every individual must do their part and lower their emissions and stuff. It was oil companies that came up with that, so that the pressure would be deflected off them onto the individuals. Make individuals feel guilty, get them to do things. The only way we're going to have a chance at addressing this problem is to get rid of all fossil fuel subsidies yesterday, as soon as possible, because that's a negative price on carbon. That's encouraging companies to mine and dig up fossil fuels and to keep burning and to send emissions skyrocketing. And I really go for the three-legged bar stool idea. We've got to slash fossil fuel emissions. That's one leg. We need to pull carbon out of the atmosphere using carbon dioxide removal and also methane out. That's another leg of the bar stool. And the third leg is solar radiation management. And I'll be talking about all those things and much more as I, both before in videos before the COP and the videos from my press conferences during the COP26. And my mom's from Bonnybridge, Scotland, so I'll be visiting that, and also I'm hoping to see Loch Lomond and maybe spotting Nessie there, right? So anyway, thanks again for listening, and thank you for watching these videos and for your support. Okay, bye for now.